Hey, there's Penny. Penny made it.
Hey, Penny. Hey, everybody. You're welcome to pop on with a video. You can hide your video. You can mute yourself, really whatever you want to do. If you have questions, pop them in the chat or come on and shout them out to us. But we're just going to get started because we have a couple of questions that we want to get through and we don't want this to be forever long, right? So I'm Sarah Harding. I'm the founder of Crunchy Supermom. I'm one of the founders of the Living Well Naturally group, and I'm super excited about the awesome wellness gurus and what do you call them? Like hacks? We're not hacks. What are we? I don't know. Guru obsessed. We're natural minded, obsessed something. We're fun. We're fun people.
Health nuts.
Health nuts. That's the
Health
word I was
nut.
looking for. See, I have to do this in groups because I can't do this myself. Anyway, so that's me. We're going to come on here and talk just a little bit about some things that we've been talking about for years and answer some myths. And I have a couple of good questions. So I'm going to go, Brianne, you want to introduce yourself a little bit there?
Yeah, hi, I'm Brianne. Brianne Pugh, and I'm an RN. I've been an RN for a really long time, over a decade. I'm also a functional nutritionist, and I live in Bellingham, Washington. I work with people online and locally, doing nutrition coaching, and just help people figure out how to optimize their wellness. And it's fun. It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing to do. So that's me.
And then we've got Maria here from another one of our co-creators of Living Well.
Hey, I'm Maria Brown. I am a functional health coach. I'm a certified personal trainer. Um, Let me see. I'm trying to remember all the tidbits Brian gave, so I can give a similar introduction. I'm currently living in Tampa, Florida. I'm a military spouse, and that's what brings me to Florida. But I'm originally from Western Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh. Let me think. What other tidbits would you like to know about me? I am a recreational triathlete, so and I love the outdoors. So I'm all about the swimming, the biking, and the running.
That's awesome. So we are eclectic to say the least. We're going to roll with the very first question we had, and then we have a couple of things we wanted to share. But we had a great one from Samantha in our community. So they are paleo. They have no gut health issues, really healthy people. I know their wellness protocol, and they're super healthy. They're doing all the right things, but they've heard of pegan. It's not pagan, but it looks like pagan. It's pegan, the vegetarian, not vegetarian, like paleo vegetarian, right? And then there's also adding some dairy, which is more primal. So she's
Right.
just curious about that and eating too much meat, which is a big deal, which is actually a problem, legit problem with paleo. So I have my personal opinion on this, but I think Brian, you'd be a great one to answer because you do paleo-ish because type diets because of the health issues, but also as a nutritionist. Yeah, I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, so Mark Hyman, he's a big functional medicine doctor. He's all about I call it pagan, even though, yeah, I guess maybe it's pegan. I don't know. It's like a vegan paleo blend, right? So the idea would be to primarily eat vegetables and in a variety of ways, cooked and raw, fresh, frozen. I mean, frozen vegetables are great. It's a good way to like get vegetables in every day and be able to buy them like once a week, and then like less meat. So having it not be a meat-based diet, because really paleo, like at its iteration, once upon a time, was not this meat-based diet. Some people have kind of turned it into that, and they think, oh, I get to eat like all the bacon in the whole wide world. And it's not just about eating bacon and steak and putting extra fat on your steak, but really eating a balanced diet with fruits, vegetables, some nuts and seeds, if they're tolerated, eggs, good quality eggs, pastured eggs, again, if tolerated, and then, an adequate amount of meat, like an appropriate amount, so roughly like a palm size at each meal. And that's if you're eating maybe like 3 meals. If you want just like a tiny bit of protein with a snack, that's okay too. It doesn't also have to be meat-based protein with the snack. So
I think too what you're saying, Brianna, about it becoming this like meat centered. That's what I fear with keto a lot of times, that it's just like, let me just bacon for everyone, you know, and
Right.
that's all it takes to be keto. And I don't intend to disparage a ketogenic diet by any means, because I think it does definitely have benefits and a time and a place. But, you know, all of these things, it's about implementing in like a practical, sensible method, you know, and really understanding what the goal is,
Right.
for the program.
Right. And so you can't even say now, if you want to say plant heavy or plant focused diet, you immediately get people who assume that you're saying like plant based or vegetarian, you know, and I think it's true that a little bit of everything is a good idea. But like Brianne was saying, it makes no sense. Like Paleolithic people were not killing things every meal. You know, if they killed something, they would make it last and last and last, right? But they would go eat the twigs and the berries and everything else that they could find to make up most of their diet. So if they had a plate, it would be like, woohoo, we get to put some meat on that plate. But most of the time we don't, right? And so that's the same thing for us. But also that whole hunters and gatherers thing of like are you as active as a cave person? Because if you're not, then I think you need to be careful about the macros, right? Or am I totally off there, Brianne? I mean,
I definitely would be careful about just macros or calorie content. I mean, obviously meat and fat is heavier in the calories. And I don't want to say like count your calories, but we live in a world where we have all of the food options we could possibly imagine. And having less options almost makes it easier to lose weight or maintain a healthy weight if that's your goal. And then having it be a little more vegetable focused can help with just making sure your nutrient density is up. So you're getting all the vitamins and minerals that you need in a day.
How many times have you seen, you know, people say, oh, paleo or whatever is not working for me. But for their snack, they're eating like a quarter cup of nuts twice a day or something like that. You know, we talked about the fats being more calorically dense, you know, and it's sort of just the awareness of you can stick to it, the do's and do nots, but can still kind of go a little bit off the path. Like you said, not necessarily counting calories, but just being conscientious is, I think, important.
right. And you're seeing these healthy eaters with really high cholesterol for the first time in their life at a really young age. And a lot of that is fiber. Like there is not a whole lot of fiber in your diet if you're eating a mostly meat and fat-based diet. So that's like the number one thing you can do naturally to reduce cholesterol is to eat more fiber. Fiber in the form of broccoli is excellent. You know, those things, again, like you said, but it's a lot easier to take like a grilled chicken to work than a salad for some people because it requires a fork to eat that salad. I mean, that's legitimately something that I've had people say on a recurrent basis. Well, it smells up the office. It has to be refrigerated and it requires a fork to eat it. So I'm just going to go with like something I can eat by hand or something. So things to take into consideration. As far as the question on dairy, my personal opinion on dairy, if you're ever eating it, it should be raw. And you can vat pasteurize it at home because I know there's all these people that are going to scare everyone with the whole like raw milk, which is a legitimate concern. But if you know your source, it is going to be expensive. Then it should be safe. But I would probably vat pasteurize it at home, which just means heating it to an adequate temperature to kill the bacteria. But we personally only use dairy to make homemade kefir or kefir, however you want to say it, or homemade yogurt. But I will not do ultra pasteurized dairy. We do not do homogenized dairy. And that includes cheese. There's a couple of raw milk cheese brands. They still vat pasteurize. Vat pasteurization just means it's heated in a smaller container, smaller batches. It's still heated to a temperature that would kill bacteria, but it's not ultra pasteurized, which means they literally boil the daylights out of it. It's so denatured that they have to add back vitamins to the milk. And at that point, why are you even drinking it? Like what health benefits does it really have? Because now you're getting synthetic vitamin D, you're getting whatever other vitamins they want to put into it. And so why would you? It's not even a food item at that point. The ultra pasteurized is that way. Homogenized, there's other risks with homogenization that would take a lot of time to explain. So my answer to that question, should you add dairy? Only if it's really, really high quality. And honestly, at that point, is it really worth it if you have good gut health? Because it does have a lot of great lactobacillus bacteria in it, the probiotic, that you can't get in a lot of other foods. You can get the synthetic kinds in a probiotic, but I don't know, do we always want to take everything in a pill? I don't know. So what are your thoughts on that? Maria, Brianne, anyone?
I love cheese. I just can't help myself. What is it Eat Wild that's the website where you can go? I have never really sourced raw milk, raw dairy in my area. Of course, my area changes since we move periodically. I know some states it's like technically illegal. Is that still true? I mean,
Yeah,
which that is ridiculous. It shouldn't be. The
yeah,
other should be illegal, but
it's illegal here in Louisiana. Mm-hmm. You can own a cow and you can milk it and you can sell the milk for pet use to pets. But I will not buy raw milk in Louisiana for other reasons. It's too hot. To source it, though, it's kind of difficult because you have to trust the farmer, because there's a lot of farmers that will say that it's raw, and the other thing is diet. Okay, one of the biggest reasons why cows had more, it's true. Okay, so way back in the day, milk was raw and people were dying. Children were dying from it because we were going from breastfeeding straight into raw milk, and they would die. The reason they were dying is we didn't have sanitation, and we started feeding cows the wrong diet. And so then they're more likely to have bacteria on their udders and like in the milk. And then, the milk is contaminated. If you're feeding a cow like strictly grass, like a grass-fed, grass-finished cow, the milk shouldn't be contaminated with as much bacteria unless you're mishandling it. You're not washing it, this standard thing. But that's the case with every food we buy. Salad has all kinds of bug poo on it, has all kinds of bird poo, goat, whatever, it has poo on it. And if you don't properly wash it, you're going to get an infection from it, most likely, So it's the same thing. It's just that milk was given to infants, so infants died. And when infants die, it's a big deal. So that's where that whole scare of raw milk came from. And so now we ultra pasteurize it so it can be shelf stable, which sounds like nothing anyone should drink. So hopefully that answers that question. I'm definitely more like, don't drink it if you can't get the high quality, but I know that's not everyone's point of view, but that's just, I've read a lot on it and seen a lot. So that's my opinion on it anyway. I know we were also kind of asked about fasting, and Brianne, I'll let you tackle that one too.
So intermittent fasting is a little tricky, or not. I guess it's pretty easy. So the idea of fasting, there's lots of different types of fasting. So but most people right now are super excited about intermittent fasting for a variety of things. So intermittent fasting can be really great for weight loss. It can be really great for kind of just like a whole body reset. It can be really great to decrease inflammation, especially with different types of autoimmune diseases. And there's a lot of research showing that it can be beneficial in like cancer prevention and cancer treatment. So it can be really good sort of all around. In fact, there's not a lot of bad things about it. When it gets a little tricky is for women. So because we're super awesome and we make the people, and we need to keep the people alive, literally and figuratively, of course, right? We do the over planning and scheduling, and then we also feed them. So we have to keep the people alive. Our bodies are more sensitive to the idea of starvation or lack of calories or nutrients. So as long as you're being mindful about how you're feeling, how your body's responding, and the type of fasting. So if you do like a 16-hour fast, which would be like stopping dinner after you eat dinner. So you eat dinner around 6, you stop eating dinner, or stop after you eat dinner, and then you don't eat again until, early lunch, right? Like 11 or 12. If you're doing that and then you're only eating for maybe an 8-hour window, that can be really beneficial. And it doesn't even have to be done every day. and it can be fine with your hormones. If you're breastfeeding or pregnant, it's probably not the greatest idea because we tend to need a little bit more calories. If you're super, super stressed out and you already have things like adrenal fatigue or kind of a flipped cortisol, where your hormones are, because your stress is so high, then you're not sleeping well, but then you're super wired at night. So you're tired all day, you're really wired at night, and then you're not sleeping great. And you're not getting restful sleep when you are sleeping. Sometimes fasting can actually be worse on the body. So Mark Sisson, he's a Primal Blueprint author, and he has a whole coaching program also. He wrote a really, really good article. I can find it and we can share it in the comment section, or we can share it with everybody so they can read it. And it was really specifically about women and fasting and hormones, and like how it can really not be the best for us. It doesn't mean to not try it and see how you respond, but it's okay if like you're not jumping on that bandwagon right this minute based on other health issues you have going on.
Thanks for that. It's good. I know fasting done incorrectly or unplanned, at least for me, like you were saying, because I'm a mom, it really mess with my mood the first few times I tried it, but I guess I just fasted. I didn't think about it. I also didn't plan my next meal very well. And I was also kind of using it in combination with keto. And when you fasted and then you're trying to eat keto, if you don't think ahead, it's bad. And then here's the other thing is I find that if I fast, and maybe Brianne knows the scientific reason why this happens, if I fast and I can't find anything but carbs at that point, and it's like been 30 minutes and I'm trying to put together something keto to eat, adding carbs after a fast is horrible. I mean, I've had like a headache, and then I had total crash where I felt like I needed to take a nap. Now, is that something, Brianne, like just because I fasted and eating sugar, not sugar, but like I had bread, basically I had toast because I was toast with a lot of butter. Is that just a carb thing? Is the carbs after a fast, is that bad?
Can you hear me? Okay, good. My volume went a little funky. No, not necessarily, but what could be happening is a blood sugar like spike, like a really high blood sugar spike, and then your body says, "Oh my gosh, what are we gonna do?" Gives you a whole bunch of insulin, and then you just crash, right? Like if you gave your kid candy when they hadn't had anything to eat all day, or a glass of juice, or you're like, "Here, just have some juice before breakfast," and then they get crazy. So same kind of idea.
Okay, well, that was my experience with it, and it took a lot of planning, so I could never be that way again. Bria, any thoughts?
Yeah, so the little bit of experimenting that I've done with fasting, I think one thing that I found that I get headaches sometimes, and so I think it's pretty important to add some, like for what works for me when I'm fasting and my energy gets a little low and I get a little headachy, is I just take some pink salt and I sprinkle a little bit of that in my water, my little cup of water that I'm never without, and that seems to really help, like perk me up a little bit, and also when I've made sure I incorporated that, it's kept me from getting headaches, I think. So I think that's one thing, and I think it's kind of like we're echoing our earlier sentiment about, it can be a useful tool, and how important it is to understand what is right for you and what your body is ready for, and when it can handle that. And I really like what you said too about planning, being ready. What are you going to break your fast with? Like a beer, probably not a good idea. So,
you'll be inebriated quicker. So I guess you're using your money wisely, but yeah, no, that would be awful.
Right. So, just this planning ahead for how long you're going to do it. And I think, I don't know, maybe Brianne can tell me, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, absolutely, is that one of the key benefits of fasting is, some people say autophagy, that letting your broken down cells go and rebuilding and things like that. And so somewhere along the line, I seem to think that I came across the information that starts to happen at around that 16-hour mark you mentioned, Brianne. So like I said, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me, like, is there a point at which it's not really worth it. I mean, obviously we're all fasting for probably about 8 hours at the minimum, because we're sleeping. You know, you probably, most of us probably aren't putting food in our mouth right until our head hits the pillow and then putting it in our mouths again when the alarm clock goes off. So I think most of us are fasting 8 hours ish. Anyway, is there benefits to going past 16 hours? Is there a benefit to doing just 12 hours in your experience or research, Brianne?
Oh,
Did we lose her?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys got really super quiet. Benefits going past 16 hours. Maybe for some people. Some people see really good success after 16 hours, even to do like a 24-hour kind of water fast. And that's where it would also be super important to like add in the salt, because you want to make sure you're not just getting water and that you're also getting some extra salt in your body, because that's what makes us not have headaches. And there's this whole sodium need that we have that's really important. So the other thing that's cool about fasting is after about 4 hours, you start to get a return of like you get a good peristaltic wave, and that's that gut actually moving. And so you want that to happen, and we don't always let it happen without having food in our bodies. So it's actually beneficial and really healing for the gut to allow that process without food. So that's one of the cool things about it also.
That's pretty cool. And speaking of gut, I know we were going to talk about, in our professions, all of them, we run into people who have presumed food intolerances, like super bad leaky gut, you know, all these gut issues, because I'm happy that society is now understanding that a lot of our illnesses begin with our gut, and almost all of it stems from the gut and also what we eat. However, everyone wants to go test, and get a black and white answer. And this just goes back to the whole, you know, it's a whole big picture thing, right? So I'm happy we have tests. The tests are awesome. I'm just as obsessed as the next person. I love to get those little check, you know, like things, but it's expensive. And if you have kids who are legitimately ill and you have a mom who's like, I don't care, take all my money, but then you're like, yep, 32 things they shouldn't eat for the next 10 months. Good luck with that. You know, so in our professions, we hear that, and we know there are other tools. So let's kind of talk about that. What does a person do if they're like, okay, I get it, leaky gut. My gut is messed up, and that's why I don't feel well. It's the root to all of my problems. What should they do first?
Personally, so what I learned in school was that the elimination diet, or like a Whole30, which I love a good Whole30 for a variety of reasons, especially when it's addressing like a health related problem. So if you have leaky gut, you know you have leaky gut, you're reacting to 20 different foods, doing a Whole30 is like an ultimate elimination diet. It gets rid of the big ticket items. You get rid of your legumes, your dairy, your soy, grain, which can be a problem for some people with leaky gut. Those things can be fine for people when their gut is intact, or intestinal permeability. So what I learned in school was, no matter what, with all the testing, a good like case history and like getting that information from the patient or the client, and then just trying an elimination diet is really the gold standard for food sensitivities and for a lot of other issues.
Right. Even before this, the skin prick, which we know is notoriously not that great. And then there's the IgG instead of the IgE, which picks up the sensitivities. But here's the problem. I know, right? IgE and IgG. So medical doctors do the IgE usually, right? And then the IgG, which is more of an intolerance, sensitivity, permeability proof. It's proof of permeability. So in layman's terms, what I'm talking about is in your intestine, when the outsides get a little leak, you know, the gaps are wide, and proteins from the food that you're eating can go into the blood system. Your body's like, danger, danger, there's an offender on premises, let's react, right? So when you do an IgG, which is a intolerance test more than like a full-blown anaphylactic allergy to food, it's going to pick up the proteins in the system. Well, that doesn't mean your body is necessarily reacting to milk. It's just reacting to the protein that floated through your intestine into the bloodstream. And that's why the more positives you get on that test, the more leaky your gut probably is, right? Because the bigger proteins in the food would be like dairy, right? Dairy and wheat have smaller molecules, so they permeate faster. Then some of the other foods have like smaller molecule or bigger molecules, so they take longer to get through. So you can tell that the bigger the gaps in your gut, the more foods that get through. So that's like the easiest way I can explain that. But eliminating all those foods is difficult because that's what's going to happen if you get that expensive test. 30, 20, 15, whatever of the most common foods you're going to have to eliminate. Instead, you could just do the whole 30. And there's cookbooks, there's tons of resources. It's easy enough that your whole family can do it. They have Whole30 approved products now. Mayonnaise, we were just talking about the other day. You had to make your own mayonnaise. You had to make your own ketchup because it had sugar in it. And now you can go to the store and yeah, you're going to pay quite a bit for it, but it's a lot less than a test. Most of those, like the good tests, are expensive. And anybody who tells you they're not, unless your insurance covers it, it's not the right test then. That's just the bottom line. So Whole30 is a great way to start with that. And then what other kinds of things? Like, what do you do after that? Should you take all the supplements, or at what point should you check in with the provider and kind of say, okay, I did this. Now what? These are the symptoms that are left. Like, is that basically the protocol that you would do, Brianne? Maria, you have some experience in this. No? Yes? Not a lot?
I didn't want to interrupt Brianne.
Oh, yes.
I can go real quick and then Maria can go too. I definitely don't always go straight for supplements because sometimes they can cause a lot of issues as well. And sometimes by the time people come to me, they're already on so many things that a lot of times I take them off a lot of stuff, or I suggest they go off a lot of stuff. If they're already working with a naturopath, I say, let's talk to your doctor. If they're on prescription medication, we don't go off of that because there's a reason their doctor put them on it. If we can get some other stuff under control, maybe they won't need it. And then because I'm a nurse and all I do is talk to doctors most of the time, I will always offer to talk to their physician if they ever want me to. I'll say, hey, I'd be happy to talk to your doctor about what we're doing so they know, right? So everyone's on a team versus isolated. But I definitely do an elimination protocol and then I recommend really slow reintroduction. What do you do, Maria?
I was just actually going to ask you something else, if you don't mind. So I totally get Whole30 and like you guys said, it's great because there are so many resources available. It makes it really easy to do. What do you guys think about trying to eliminate one thing at a time, approaching it that way? Or do you think it's better to, like you said, eliminate all of the big offenders at once and then reintroduce things one at a time? Or is there any value to just saying, okay, let me just take a break from this dairy here for a little while and see if I notice any differences?
It's okay. My personal opinion on that is because it takes well over 30 days to get dairy protein out of the fatty tissues of your body, so it's still in your body. It takes so long, and if you slip up one time, then you basically need to start all over. Who wants to do that? And so then, and I just feel like it just takes so much time. And so if you spend 30 to 60 days eliminating dairy and you're not really that much better, so then you got to go do dairy and gluten. Well, what if you get better? Then do you assume it's dairy and gluten or just the gluten? Or is it just your gut? It's not about the food. If you were allergic to the food, you would be allergic to the food and you would know it. If I eat calamari, my face will just blow up, right? It's the food. But if it's not the food and it's just your gut, it's your gut. And it could be any food. You could eliminate dairy today and not treat your gut, and it could be cherries tomorrow. It could literally be that way. And that's what happened with my child. I did GAPS, the gut and psychology syndrome, with her. And so she literally flip-flopped the 12 most common foods she was eating. she was said to be intolerant to or, reacting to. So we did GAPS, and then we reintroduced them and she was fine. And then the next 12 foods that she preferred to eat, she started reacting to those because we didn't really heal the gut. We lowered the inflammation. We did a great job getting her some of her external symptoms under control, but we hadn't really cured the gut. We really hadn't sealed it up. And so that's my take on it. I mean, if you're going to do it, go big or go home. Like, don't even mess with it.
What do you guys think about, I'm a fan of collagen. So whether that is like bone stock, preferably homemade from well-sourced bones of whatever sort of good, well-treated creature you can find. I also use the Vital Proteins collagen protein as well. It pretty much disappears to nothing in coffee. So that's pretty easy to incorporate for people who aren't necessarily somebody who's going to have a smoothie or whatnot like that. That's one of the things I kind of like for gut health, and the collagen is good for a lot of other aspects of your body as well. What do you guys think of that?
It's a good place to start. Some people have like histamine issues, which comes hand in hand with some of the upper level gut problems. I know Brianne's got experience with that. So it just depends, because it can make someone a lot worse if they have a histamine issue. So, going to real stock, even low histamine stock, which just means slower, lower pressure, quicker cooking, it still has a lot of benefits. Really, why do we need the bone broth and the collagen? Because we don't eat muscle meat. We just don't. People go and buy the chicken breast. They're not eating the knobbly bits and the junk off the chicken, and that's why people can experience healing from that. So it's not really about the collagen so much as replacing something in our diet that we're not getting, because we're not balancing. We talk about like omega-3, 6, and 9. We eat too much of like omega-3, right? So we need more omega-6. I always get it backwards, whichever way. That's why eggs were bad for your cholesterol for so long, because people were not eating it in balance. The same thing with the collagen. The collagen is helping balance out all of your muscle meats. So a person could go vegetarian who eats a lot of muscle meat and suddenly be well, because they're not eating too much of the muscle tissue and not enough of the alpha linoleic acid, however you say that. Yeah, that, right? So it's a good place to start. I don't think it's bad. But if somebody gets worse on it, try regular bone broth first.
Oh, yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Before saying like, no, that didn't help. Yeah.
I think that'd be good.
So we'll kind of wrap this up, since, a lot of great questions. In Living Well, we have a 90-day wellness challenge that we're doing right now. And so I just want to invite everyone to take a look at that if you haven't already. And kind of what we're doing is taking a pre-survey, like on day 0, of the health conditions that people are working on, what they're doing to kind of heal that, like what providers are working with. And it's completely confidential. It's just between basically the founders of Living Well. And so we're kind of looking at that, and we're tailoring the education that we're providing to the group to these specific issues, and revisiting it at 30 days and 60 and 90 days. And I know we've been talking a lot about some of this stuff like NRF2 activation and the gut healing benefits of it and things like that. So anything else you ladies want to say? I just want to invite everyone to take that survey and get involved with that. Anything else? Closing thoughts?
If I can touch on NRF2 activation and the gut, I think one thing is that when we're exposed to, so the idea behind NRF2 activation is that it helps us decrease our oxidative stress in our bodies, and it activates our like antioxidant response systems, like an entire system or systems of proteins that help with antioxidants and help fight reactive oxygen species in the body, as well as not just oxygen, but like hydrogen peroxide. So our bodies make hydrogen peroxide, and we need our catalase, which is our systems, to break down that hydrogen peroxide into water, water and oxygen. Yeah, water. I had to think about it for a second. Water and oxygen. And so we need that system working. When it's not working, that's just one tiny example of what the NRF2 pathway and what NRF2 activation kind of works on. But when it's not working, that hydrogen peroxide builds up in your body and can cause inflammation. So if you think about your gut, and when it's got intestinal permeability, teeny tiny little holes in it, or you have inflammation in your joints, something that's just not healing in your body for some reason, that getting rid of that oxidative stress can help allow the body time to heal and help support just the detoxification process. Like, yes, we have natural detoxification processes in our body. This isn't a detox. This is activating your genes to work like they're supposed to. So, like for me personally, I had really bad IBS. And since I started really focusing on NRF2 activation, that's been the first of my issues to start to resolve. And within less than 30 days, I was off like 7 IBS supplements, which is like insane. That's insane. so that's just like a little bit about it, and like why we have been talking so much about it in our groups.
Yep. And the external, the skin issues, we've had people very quickly having positive skin reaction because psoriasis and eczema and all those external skin symptoms, they're stemming from gut health. And so that's one of the first benefits I've heard from a lot of people in our community that they've had. So it's super cool. Anything else, ladies? We'll wrap it up. Does anyone else have questions here who's watching live and on the call? Looks like Sarah Rose. She said, yeah, her too. She must have been struggling with going fasting, headaches. So nothing else? So we'll look forward to questions next week then. We'll try to get this going again.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.